I'm Dawn Montefusco, Transformational Writing Coach, and this is the healing power of words. Create with passion and write powerful stories that have impact. And today we have not only an awesome guest, but a dear friend who I've known quite a long time. I'm not even sure anymore. I've lost track of all time. His name is Justin Levy. Justin says when he was 6, he met a spiritual master, Baba Muktananda, who changed his life. He didn't know it at the time, but he started a process inside him called a Kundalini awakening. And the Kundalini energy is an energy hidden inside us, wrapped up and hidden within our traumas, karma, and unresolved emotions. Most of us are disconnected from what is happening in the deeper recesses of our being. And Justin says because of that disconnection from our feelings, we spend most of our time of our lives projecting and recreating our own unhealed karma and pain in the external world. When the Kundalini started to awaken in Justin, it became harder and harder for him to disconnect from what he was feeling. All the pain, sorrow, and suffering we experience as coming from an external source, he realized is very real and very true. But if we don't also recognize the source of that pain inside ourselves, he says we are doomed to recreate it. This is the ultimate teaching of the Kundalini energy, that we are totally interconnected, body, mind, and spirit, with the outside world. Justin says any change we want to see in the outside world has to start within ourselves because we are the outside world. The foundation of his work, Kundalini mediumship, comes from 3 traditions: the Hindu yogic tradition, primarily Baba Muktananda, Brazilian capoeira and candomblé, and South American shamanism. His mentors and teachers led him to his own inner knowledge. The goal with his work is to show people that anyone can access this energy and find their answers inside themselves. It takes time, dedication, and a willingness to go deep inside to find the light shining through your darkness. That felt awesome to read, I might add, and I can attest to his work because I've taken his mediumship workshop and it's fantastic. So Justin, before we jump in, what are you up to these days? What projects are you working on?
So actually, where I am right now is I'm at my new healing center. It's called Spirit House.
Oh,
There's been years and years and years in the making, and I actually just opened it up in early March, right when COVID hit.
Wow.
So I'm doing healing individual sessions here. I'm also doing classes and workshops, small because of COVID. But this, for me, like this place is actually, I really want to have this be a resource, like a community center, a resource, a place where people can go and actually be anchored down in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled when I saw that email that this was happening because I've watched your journey. I mean, it's another level that's incredible. And okay, so tell us your initiation into storytelling.
Yeah, so I've had several initiations into storytelling, and let me preface that by saying, within the yogic tradition, I had to leave that tradition because they have this guru-disciple model that I feel does not work now. And so a lot of times in my work and even working with this energy and the spirit, I've been searching for different models. And the storytelling tradition itself, I believe, comes from a more indigenous-based model. A model, and I'll maybe describe that term a little bit later, but I want to talk about the first time I really was initiated into storytelling. And the reason it's funny I'm doing this interview with you, Dawn, is because you were there. And this was 2009.
Right.
And we were at the Beloved Festival. So the Beloved Festival is a big festival down in Southern Oregon with a lot of music and dancing and speakers and kind of like a little hippie festival.
Well, and I want to say to everyone, it's a world music festival. So it's not just local. They have people come from all over the world to share in workshops and dancing. So it's a bit unique in that respect.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So what happened was we were there and I was with you and another friend of ours. And what happened was we went and there was this guy speaking and he was drumming. His name was Michael Mead. Mm-hmm. And he is a storyteller and deep within the storytelling tradition and realms and all of that. And what happened was he was up on stage and he was drumming and he was telling this story, and somehow he put me into a trance and took me into his story. And his story was something about in the old days, in the old times, our ancestors would have this ritual where they would bring people in who had been hurt. And they would put them in the center of this circle and they would listen to their hurt and they would allow these people to speak about the hurt they'd experienced and their wounding and their trauma. And they would have this place where they're able to be with it, to work with it, to transform it, to just let it come out. And then after that, the people who had hurt them, the victimized, the perpetrators, were allowed to come in and they were allowed to share, this is what happened for me with that, and to ask for forgiveness. And what happened was he took me into this and I saw this whole thing come up. I saw this ceremony in the village. I saw myself as both the victim and the perpetrator. I saw myself in all of these roles. Yeah. And what happened was I just started crying. And what it felt like was his story cracked me open. It cracked open a part of my shell around my heart, and it cracked open. And tears started coming down. And I remember being with you, and you were there, and you were kind of just letting me go through that space.
I remember thinking, he's like really crying. Like this isn't just like a tearing up kind of situation. Like, and you know, at Beloved, they sort of do, I mean, I think there's a vibe in the air that is like, let everyone go through their process, because a lot of these things. And so I just remember just being like, well, he's got his process. But I was like, wow, something just happened.
Yeah. The other thing that happened was our other friend was not as open to that process. And I remember her looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, and then she would look at you and say, what's going on with him? Like, what's he doing? And I remember just feeling like, I'm here, I'm like, everything's cracked open. And here's this person just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So after that day, I bought Michael Mead's book. I was really in love with like what he was saying and what he was doing. Are you ready for part 2 of this story? There's a few parts of this story, and it's going to illustrate the overall.
So what I'm hearing is, so there was an experience, what I want everyone to hear is that through Michael Mead, who you should look up, M-E-A-D-E, and through this drumming experience of explaining the indigenous ways of telling story and what the healing properties of story is, you truly connected, and it opened. That experience didn't end there. It actually started.
Right. Something. And this is a part of the storytelling part I want to really dig into, which is I think most people feel as if when they have an experience like that, they think, okay, I went through that and now I'm done. Now I healed that and that's done. And that is bullshit.
I wish.
It's over. It's all done. I've healed it and now I'm free. And that is a trick. So I actually, in the Candomblé tradition, there's this trickster spirit named Eshu. And in my work, I talk about him a lot.
Right, that's right, Eshu.
And he comes in, great job. Congrats, you're done with that. And he's just tricking us. But I want to talk about actually how those wounds that he was opening up, they can heal, but what happens is our relationship to them shifts. And so the second part of this story is I went back to Beloved in 2019. This was 10 years later.
That's right.
I had 10 years since I had been. And I went back. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this place had gotten a lot bigger. And I was like, day 2, I think. Day 3, day 2, I'm not sure what. And I go back, there's Michael Mead again. Didn't have his drum this time. And he's talking, and all of a sudden, he tells the same fucking story. And I said, oh shit, I know. And again, the tears, I'm back in that place.
Oh,
the tears are coming down. I said, oh my God, again? Like, I'm back here again. He's telling the story. I was like, I know this story, and I'm back in there again, the same process. And then there was this little bit of magic happened, which is there was this friend of mine who's a therapist that I know who's very, very deeply committed to healing, and she's a beautiful person. And she was there. And I didn't know it was her at the time, but as I'm sobbing again, going through this process again, this person comes up and just puts her hand on my heart. And I felt as if, oh, okay, this person is here with me. They're not trying to change anything. They're not trying to fix anything. They're just here. And it helped that process so much.
I know her, and I've got to say, she holds space so well. She really does. She really does.
Yeah. I don't want to put her name out there because
no.
You know her, she was there, and she really helped. She was just there with me. And I opened my eyes, and it was her. I was like, oh, of course.
Yeah, totally.
But in terms of the wound, what happened again is I went back into that same spot, but from a different angle, from a place, actually, there's a wound that I have too, where I have to do everything alone, and that people won't be with me and support me and things like that.
Wait, pause there. So the wound is that's the story you write.
Yeah.
Say that again, because
one of the wounds that I have, one of the stories that I have is this whole spiritual journey, or this whole journey into the darkness that I got to do alone.
Wow.
And that's a wounded part. And that part has actually been shifting over the years. I'm not going to say it's done, but it has been shifting. And so what happened with this person was, when she was there, I recognized, oh wait, I'm back in this same spot that I was in 2009, but from a deeper place. Yeah. And actually the deeper place of this wound of having to do all this stuff alone, it shifted. Not done, but it's shifted.
Love this. And can I ask if the shift is there also the shift like, wait, maybe I don't have to do this alone?
Yeah, this is the part where, so in my work, I have when I do my physical work, what I do is I do this very intense physical work on our body. What we do is we have these cords in our body that actually lock us down. The outer level of that cord is what I call the wall. And what it does is it prevents us from going in, or if we go in, it tries to pull us back out. Underneath that, there's like a friction spot in between the wall and with the next level, which is called the wound. In between that is where it's a little bit of the wall, a little bit of this painful wound. And as we dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the wound, there's this place that I call between the wound and spirit.
Ooh.
And what we're trying to do is work into the gaps in these spaces. That makes sense?
I totally
so this wound of I have to do it alone, or there's other people to help, it's this kind of in-between space where
there's stories. There are little stories that we talk about.
Stories. They're based on the stories that I've been through in the past karma, family stories, ancestral stories. All of it's woven into those cords. And so yes, owning our stories and knowing what those stories are and actually embodying them and working with them is the key, I think, to this whole thing.
And you work with movement. One of the things I love that you do, and I've been threatening to do this. Actually, you know, the friend of ours who had the warehouse that he bought, and we were going to do in-person workshops and such, and we will. My prediction is that at the end of February 2021, there will be a shift, and we will start to be able to congregate again. And I have no science to back that up. I just have this feeling. But one of the things is that I love that you really get your clients to start to move the body. And because tell us a little bit about the energy that gets stuck. Because I think that we loop a story unconsciously, and then it gets stuck in our body.
Right.
Tell me more. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the story that we get stuck in. Okay, so I think the story we get stuck in is because of that force, that Eshu or that trickster force trying to keep us from going in. So we end up looping around instead of digging in, or we dig in and we pop back out. Most people, when I'm doing this Kundalini work, they go in and then they pop back out and pop in and pop out. And the movement happens actually on its own. When I start doing the physical work, or other people that are doing this work, we tap into the Kundalini energy, and the energy itself moves people. So basically what it is you surrender to the spirit, and the spirit moves you. In Christianity, it's just the Holy Spirit. If you've seen Pentecostal or Baptist, the spirit takes people, they shake. Totally. In Brazil, it's called Axé, and the gods or the Orisha take people over. And in the Kundalini tradition, it's just the Kundalini energy itself can connect you to these gods, spirits, ancestors, and the energy will start moving you. And in Muktananda's tradition, where I came from, those are called Kundalini Kriyas. They're spontaneous movements as the cords inside our body start shifting.
How does this, when we move the energy in our bodies and we start to understand, would we call it like, is it a lie? Is the story that we want to heal a lie so that we can get to the truth? Or is it another form of truth that brings us to a deeper form of truth? Like, I'm always curious.
Tell you another story about that.
Okay, cool.
There's this indigenous speaker, his name's Randy Woodley, and I heard him talk. I think he comes, I don't say exactly what tribe, so I'm not sure exactly. And he gave this talk about this whole thing. And what he said was, he told this story that was passed down from his mentors in his tribe. And I can't remember the story exactly, but it's about their ancestor going up onto this hill. I can't remember it. But he told this story, and then he says, what happens after I tell this story to white audiences is they say, is this story true? Did this really happen? And he said, indigenous people, we don't give a shit about this kind of factual, like, oh, did this happen the way we said it? He said, when the story is real, when it's felt in our body, then it's real. And we don't care about the factual truth in that. So my sense is that if we're playing a story out, even if it's not our highest good, it's still a real story that we're playing out in the world. So this idea of, is it true, is it not? If it's real and if we're living it out, or if we're living it out, my feeling is that it's real.
You say in your bio, let me get this right, about how any change we want to see in the outside world has to start within ourselves because we are the outside world. Tell me more about that, because in my experience, that's so true and so frustrating. Yeah. Because I want, right? Like, so I'll say, I'll meditate every day and I try to catch my thoughts and I, do all these modalities. And then yet I find myself in a pattern that's maybe from my ancestors or from my parents or whatever's going on. And I'm like, I just want to change that pattern. And it's showing up. I know that if I change the inside world, the outside world will change. Well, how the heck does someone get there or try?
So in my opinion, we can't change patterns at all. Most people, intellectually, I can say this or do this. I don't think it works that way. And this is where the magic of spirit takes over.
I love this.
Because we have to be open enough to spirit. Like Michael meets, this thing has to happen over and over and over again. In shamanic worlds, they call it this death and rebirth. These patterns that are inside of us, they're based on identity. So we identify with these patterns. In order to shift them, they have to die. We have to go through a process of this death of this old way. That's the part of magic and its spirit. And let me talk about one more thing about this part too. Yeah. So when I talk about the wall, when I talk to most people, the biggest block they have to storytelling is when I first talk to people, when I do my version of this, when I first talk to people, they're usually in this wall state, the outer realm of the wall, which is they speak in generalities. How's it going? It's good. How is everything? Good. Or people come in for a treatment. What do you want to do today? What are you here for? I'm here to work on letting go. Okay, that's all of that. There's nothing happening out there. There's no story there. So then, and actually, Don, you were one of the people that taught me this too. How do we probe a little bit without poking too much that it becomes traumatic, which is an ongoing lesson for me.
Yeah, me too.
So, we're East Coasters.
Yeah.
Again, and I have to be, it's a good lesson for me. So underneath the generalities is what I call the externalities. What's happening? Oh, this fucking person, my boss, my mom, my bitch. Now we're getting into some story, but it's external, which is great. That's the deeper way in. Underneath that level of the wall, which is the entrance into the wound, is what I call the polarity identity. And then what happens is we have this part of ourselves that we've dissociated from and disconnected from, that is what we've walled off. And then what happens is that pops up and out of our bodies, our belly, and it starts to hook into other people. And when it does, it manifests another person who is a representation of that dissociated identity. So I could go on and on about Trump or political things, masks, anti-mask, whatever it is that's happening inside. We then have this very strong emotional reaction, and it's external. What happens is we are actually projecting out our wound onto somebody else. And it's a very tricky dance to understand how. I have this vision of these cords that are interlocking, and our cord attaches onto somebody else's cord. And as long as we feel like it's just somebody else, we don't like pick apart this place where our cords are intertwined, we're not going to actually heal. But to do that, it's tough.
It takes a lot of work. It reminds me of the work I do. I'm in Al-Anon. My father was an alcoholic, and he was a wonderful man. But looking back, I was a caretaker, and I realized if someone didn't need me, I didn't think they would love me.
Right.
And that was not even, that's like a story. But I brought that into so many relationships of, I need to fix you. I mean, my whole, my business started to work that way as a life coach and working with at-risk youth. But then as I got trained more and more and more and more of letting go and allowing the person to have their experience the way they needed it, and just to ask the important questions to get it out of them, I find that interesting because I don't remember what exactly, but I was having a treatment with you, and you said something about go home and draw, like go in and draw what you see. What do you see? Because I said I was protecting myself or something, and I said that I saw this Asian woman in a robe, and she had 2 gold swords. And so I went home and I drew a pretty damn good picture, by the way, for someone who doesn't know how to draw. And I drew these swords, and I was like, wow, like this chick's like ready for action. Like she's protecting, like, don't you come near me. And I showed you her, and you were like, this is very interesting. Would you be willing to like cut off the swords and just have her be there? And I was like, no. And I don't know, I mean, it seems so silly. It's like a paper doll. And I just remember being like, no, like, And so I put her on my altar, and I remember maybe a year or so went by, and I caught my eye on her, and I went, oh, let me take those swords off. And then I put them down by her feet. Very interesting. And I just remember thinking, like, what is going on here? Like, and I decided through your work, I didn't need to know. Like, I didn't need to know all the reasons why. And then eventually I burned it. I just set her free, But there's something about this allowing life to be on life's terms. That I find to be very difficult, that I often find that people I work with, and myself included, that I want to control things, and the more that I try to make something happen versus allowing it to happen, whether it's being calm, whether it's, I don't know, just being present, God forbid, that the more I try, sometimes it backfires. And it gets me back into somewhere unconsciously before I even know it. I'm in a spin, maybe even taking it out on someone. You know what I mean? Like judging something. When you say, so when someone works with you and they want to feel better, I'm assuming once you get into those layers, they feel better. How do you work with story with them to get them to get beyond that external layer and even beyond that vibrational place to really get into, do they get into like a deeper story?
Yes. Can I throw this out here first?
Yes.
So maybe we can do just a little bit here with you. Ooh. There's a couple things I want to jump back to. And one of the things that I talk about, I want to talk about the wall god, Eshu, trickster god. So the key for all of this is getting into a right relationship with him. So what he does is he closes the doors, or if we really want to open them, he'll open them. But he'll test us every step of the way. You really want to open this? Oh, you say you do, but he actually knows us better than we know ourselves, because he's the part that actually hides parts of ourselves from each other. So he knows the whole process. So this process is about getting into a right relationship with him. So I'm going to get back to, and actually the way that he works and the way that actually even the stories work is through contracts. I'm going to get into this contracts part right here. The contracts with Eshu, with this wall god, are in the form of, if I do X, Y, or Z, I won't have to feel what's underneath.
Ooh.
So when you were talking about initially about the thing with your dad, I call that the empath contract.
Ooh.
Oh. Empath contract, or the codependent, I call it empath, because it's actually what, as empaths, what we do, and I have this version of this too, we feel into another person's suffering.
Yes.
And what happens is we are disconnected from our own suffering, and we're going through something that's traumatic, and especially with a caregiver. And what the contract develops is, if I take care of this person enough, then I'll be okay.
Yes.
So, of course, what happens is that whole contract is designed to keep us away from our own suffering. And there's a never-ending list of people to take care of or to fix.
Tell me about it.
So the contract that Eshu presents is, here's a temporary fix. If you make this person okay, you'll be all right. But eventually the whole thing starts to collapse.
Absolutely.
So the way I usually go with this is, you have this contract. If you were to feel, what would it feel like to not fix so-and-so? And it sounds like you've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of a little bit of this right now, actually. So like I spent off camera, we were talking, I just spent like 3 days in the woods, and to get away from all, because I knew I was doing these, online things, and we all got to disconnect. And I remember feeling a little bit angry. I was like, man, am I just broken? Like, what is it about me and relationships and picking up like fixer-upper relationships, people who I want to save? And there's I'll be private about what that means, but I think people pretty much understand that. And whenever I make space for there to not be anything to fix, I wind up crying for hours. Like, and I tell people around me, luckily I, hang out with people who know me well, and, I'll be talking about that's a beautiful plant you have over there. And they're like, and they're saying, are you okay? I was like, I don't know. This thing is just happening again. And it seems like whenever I actually make space where it's just me, even if I'm in a relationship or whatever, but when I finally make that space, and I have a sponsor for Al-Anon, which deals with, more of I'd say an American version of, this whole codependent, narcissist, empath relationship, but I don't know what to do with that space. Like, I feel like I'm just scraping the surface at 51 of even knowing that I've been living this way. And now there's like, it's funny. As you know, we've both worked with plant medicines of different types. And I remember asking the question, how can I rid myself of this struggle? It was 2005. And the voice kept saying, there's no story here. There's no story here. There's no story here. There's no story here. I must have said it 1,000 times to me during this plant medicine meditation. And I still am trying to understand the message there. But when I'm not having someone to fix, and I'm not putting all my effort in, but if I do this for you, then you'll love me, I seem to just get very incredibly, like, so emotional that I tend to isolate a little bit. I'll play my music. I'll write. Writing is a huge, huge part of the healing. I don't write linearly. Weird shit comes out of me. So it's truly like an unknown area right now, because I'm now getting aware that this is happening. It took this long.
So what I would say is, when you don't have that external thing, now you're in the wound area.
Okay.
The wound place, this is the place that is interesting. The parallels your story are with my story. When Michael May was talking, he just cracked into the wound. You are alone, the tears start coming and the emotions start coming. That's why actually my work is really based on emotion and connecting to emotion. There's no explanation, there's no ration, there's no reason. It's pure emotion. And actually the spirit is bound up within that. Surrender into the spirit is sometimes it's in the yogic tradition, they call it bhakti. It's just pure emotional connection. And this is the part like, oh, how do we change? We don't change this. We don't fix this. We let the spirit, when we connect to the spirit, it's a thing that just happens. And you have to be willing to surrender into it when it does. And my goal is to create the structure around which that can happen. But that is a mysterious, that's actually the feminine force in this work. So a lot of our culture, we talk about meditation a lot, which is great. That's the masculine force. That's the discipline, the focus, the concentration. But the bhakti and the emotion is the love and the feminine. And actually my work is based on that. Let's connect into the emotions and let them just express.
You know, so I've been singing spontaneously. So basically I'm just letting sounds emote recently, words to my dog. And I've been feeling like I got a guitar for the first time in 20 years. I haven't picked it up. Now I'm playing again. And I'm not playing to like play. I'm playing like whatever, the vibrations are moving me. And I'm finding that in my meditation, I have something that I say, I let go of the meditator. I let go to doing anything right. I let go of having to, you know, what if there was no meditator? What is there after that, you know? And I've been that is the place where I feel open and I feel calm, and I still don't know what to do with it. You know? But I'm liking what you're saying because I feel very connected, and I think the people, I know this audience loves this. What would you recommend? A lot of everyone on here loves to write. And I think one of the things that I want people to be is having a freedom, whether even if it's recording or not recording or just expressing, that there's something about expressing. Do you need someone to hear you? Do you know, or is it okay for spirit to hear you? I mean, what's the relationship that someone can have with their stories that they're learning and processing on their own?
So say that again, one more time. Say that again.
Yeah. So when writers are wanting to do this deeper work, and so now you're saying, don't worry about why or trying to grab onto answers.
Not quite. Let me pick this part. Let me throw this out here. Like I said, so the key to this work, the key to opening this whole door is this trickster spirit Eshu. His whole job, if you can remember, is to protect us from our feelings.
Okay, gotcha.
Protect us from these uncomfortable places. So instead of saying something like, go somewhere where you feel free to do X, Y, Z, that's not what I would suggest. What I would suggest is, if you are somewhere and you don't feel free, explore that feeling and that will take you in. So you made a statement and you said, when you do your thing, when you start crying, doing all this stuff, you go alone. My sense is you go alone because to reveal that, to open up in front of others would be painful or would be difficult. And there's an exploration there. And this is where we go kind of slow. For me, I'm just like, let's just jump in. But everybody kind of has to approach this at the place, at the speed they want to go. If you have a discomfort showing this in front of somebody else, whatever your discomfort is, that's the place in between where the magic is.
You would be proud of me because I did go to my friend's land, and I thought, this is interesting, you'll love this. I thought it was just me and Kate, my best friend, right? And I thought we were going to go visit my friend Melody, who lives on this beautiful big land by the river. And as I'm getting there, I'm realizing that there's a pod they created because of COVID, which is good friends of mine, and they've been isolated. So I was like, what do you mean there's 10 people there? And I literally am driving in when I got the text and wanted to turn around. I was like, no. I didn't sign up for being in front of people today. But I didn't want to drive another hour home. So I just parked in my car and I was like, whoa, I don't know if I can handle this. And I was like, well.
What did you feel? What did you feel?
I just was crying. I was crying on the drive. I was thinking about a recent breakup. I was just like, actually, and then that went into other things, and it just, my brain just started to go and go. And I didn't mind allowing it because I was by myself in my car, right? And then I got out of the car and people saw me drive up and they're like, hey, Zigzag. By the way, everyone, my middle name is Zigzag. My necklace says that, for those that don't know. Most people know that. And they're like, hey, Zig, Dawn, whatever. And I just decided at that moment, because I don't know, I just did. I just walked straight over them in tears. And they saw the makeup had run. They saw the puffy face. They're like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm very emotional right now. And that's all I know. And I didn't go in a story. And they simply, we didn't embrace because we're doing the 6 feet thing, except for me and my best friend, Kate. And then they said, come sit. Let's look at the river together. And I just sat there and cried. And I asked them how they were doing. I had some tissues, you know, and no one tried to stop me, which I thought was really interesting. Like, I had a completely different version of what this would be like.
You thought it would be my first story with our friend. So
yes.
What's interesting is you're going into, this is an interesting synchronicity of you're telling the story that we started off this whole thing with.
That isn't it. And so I just didn't know what was happening. And I was just like, oh. And then even stranger now that you say that is my friend's brother was there, and he's a very like hardcore meditator, you know, every morning an hour and a half, every evening an hour and a half, like sweet, you know, very stable, not like me, you know. And he just looks at me and goes, oh, I hear you meditate. And I go, yeah. He goes, well, would you like to join me later? And I'm, you know, wiping off everything. And he's not worrying about my emotions. And I said, maybe. And he goes, well, how about this? You can just decide later and I'll just mention it. And I thought, okay, like, where's all this coming from? You know, like I didn't expect it. And then we did, and we sat for an hour. You'll love this. I thought it was the quickest hour in my life. I felt so calm. He said it was the longest hour of his life. And I think it was that energy. You know, he maybe was, I don't know, but I know that his energy was very calming for me. And I don't think mine was very calming for him.
Bringing up this part here, I'm going to tie that back into the empath contract.
Yes, I was hoping you.
Empath, we're going through this, and especially revealing this side to other people. What it can feel like is, oh, my energy is fucking this person up, is harming this person because I'm out of control, I'm this or I'm that, and our responsibility for other people's state. My belief is what's happening is when we're in a state like that, and we're in a state with that first person I was telling you about, we are triggering their unhealed, wounded part. And if they're not ready to process or go into that, they're going to try to stop it by telling us, trying to get us to stop what we're doing.
Wow.
And they're going to, oh, you're a problem, you're too this, you're too, I've heard that, and I know a lot of women have heard that, you're too emotional, you're too unstable, you're too irrational, I can't talk to you right now. And really what's happening is in this empath narcissist contract,
yes,
the empath, the narcissist is going to say, hey, you are too, and actually what's happening is they're not in touch with their own emotional state.
Totally.
They're blaming it on the empath.
Totally.
The empath's like, oh yeah, that's my fault. Your emotional state is definitely mine.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't fix you, you know, like.
It doesn't mean they're narcissists. It's just the contrast, the nature of the contract that I'm trying to describe. So as an empath, we'd be very sensitive about our energy hurting other people. That
is so real. Like I just can't believe what you just said. That is so real. I'm hearing more and more and more people saying, I think, you know, people, you know, are saying, oh God, everybody in their empath stuff. But what's interesting is like, isn't that what we're moving towards, is acknowledging that as opposed to making fun of it? Because I almost feel like there is I mean, I know that there's people out there that make fun of that statement. Oh, you're empathic, or oh gosh, she says she's empathic. I'm like, well, maybe that person is feeling things. Why would we make that? I mean, we're emotional beings, we're human, that's what we do.
Right.
And Eshu comes in and tries to mess with that.
Let me actually, one version of that too. There's a thing I've come across when I've come across kind of like a type A kind of guy, like a businessman. Hey, I'm not emotional. I just boom, XYZ. what I've actually experienced with them is they're actually highly emotional, but they've created a story that says, no, I'm rational and this and that. For them, what happens a lot of times is when things don't go in the way that X, Y, Z, they get angry, and they use their anger as a motivator, and they figure out how to use anger and rage and different emotions to get things done that they want to get done. And when they're uncomfortable, when that empathic emotional thing is flared up, they don't use those terms. But a lot of people that I know, they crafted a story around it that says, oh, I'm not this person. And usually they end up with somebody who is very emotional. And there's these chords. So I think the way people describe things is not sometimes accurate.
I love this. I love this. And I could honestly, and I think we should do another one of these on my weekly show, because there's a bigger conversation that it's going to evolve. And I absolutely know that my audience loves this. And you have a free gift for us that actually goes into some of the healing with this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's a video where I go over the basics of tracking. So tracking is understanding how these external cords that we have linked in with other people are reflecting back in with us. So in the video I talk about, and I'm gonna have a little worksheet too, which is the issue, the wall.
Yeah.
The wall statements, the wall contracts. How do I dig in? How do I get, and basically what we do is we get triggered by other people, and we understand what are the processes I've developed to lessen the feeling of that. And then if we go into that, then we get into the wounded part. Underneath the wound is the spirit. So the whole goal is to track and dig into the spirit.
Yeah.
So some kind of more new agey stuff, I feel sometimes skips over the wound. Let's go right to spirit.
Right, agreed.
Right. And then some people, they're like, no, let's get into the dark. Let's just kind of sit in the wound and
sit there.
And I think we got to go through the whole thing over and over and over. We can't skip over one. We can't just sit in the dark, because some people are actually scared of their light. Some people I've met are scared of their divine part. They're scared they might lose it, or they're scared of whatever. So they just sit out here. So there's all the defense mechanisms are infinite. And the goal is to understand how you've developed this relationship with Eshu to block these places off. And then how do we renegotiate that?
I love this. I can't wait. I mean, I've done some of it personally with you, but I'm looking forward to the video and working more with you. And I can't thank you enough. This has been just a blast, obviously.
Thanks,
and
Dawn.
to go back in time. I love the big loop that happened. Thanks for letting me be vulnerable, because, I do want us all to, I think what I really want is for the world to just learn to be themselves, learn to be okay with who they are, and then learn that there's people like you and many others to help us get through this, because there's a message in life. And I once heard that we're born with a wound and a gift, and our journey is to create a gift out of our wound.
Right.
So I'm sure you're doing that. So everybody, when you get to Portland, look up Justin, and we're going to have all your information on the page with the free gift. And I just want to say thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks, Dawn. Appreciate being on. I'm so glad we reconnected.
Yeah, I love you, Justin.
Love you too.
I can't wait to have tea.
All right.
Okay.